Kamen Rider. The adventures of the legendary karate bugmen fighting for justice have been around for what seems like forever. With the first series airing on Japanese television in 1971, Kamen Rider and other series like it in the tokusatsu genre have captured the minds of many all around the world. Even some of Japan's greatest creatives have cited Kamen Rider as an influence on them. But what makes Kamen Rider so special? Why are people still talking about it? Well, that's what I'm going to be talking about in this video. This is not exactly a history lesson on Kamen Rider, but just what leads people to pick up the series in the first place, from the old school Showa writers to the newest version Kamen Rider Geats. Why do people still care about Kamen Rider? Want to know the answer? Well then, my dear viewers, just sit back, relax as I explain the appeal of Kamen Rider from the Showa era. Let's get this started in style, shall we? Raider! Henshin! The legend of Kamen Rider would begin in 1971, where the first Kamen Rider series aired in Japan. The series was created by Shotaro Ishinomori. Before Kamen Rider, Ishinomori was a popular mangaka who created a wide array of different series, from popular action series like Cyborg 009 to out there avant-garde stories like Fantasy World June. Ishinomori was a visionary and ahead of his time when it came to the manga that he created. The 70s is when he would dive headfirst into tokusatsu. Tokusatsu, which literally means special effects, are essentially just live-action series with a high amount of special effects. Today that would mean CGI, but back in the day it was rubber suits and deceptive editing that made tokusatsu what it was. This style of live-action storytelling started with Godzilla back in 1954, but ever since Ishinomori took over the scene, it became more focused on masked heroes fighting for justice. Now there were superhero series before Kamen Rider, the main one being Ultraman. But after Kamen Rider came out, it took Japanese television by storm. It became incredibly popular, influencing an entire genre of kids to fight for justice as well. Now in this video, I'm mainly going to be talking about the Showa era of Kamen Rider. Because if I tried to talk about all of the eras of Kamen Rider, this video would be way too long and would never come out. So yeah, we're only going to be talking about the Showa era today. But my next video, we're going to be talking about the Heisei and Reiwa eras, so stay tuned for that. I also feel like splitting this into two videos gives me a chance to dive a bit deeper into each era, considering that they're also different from each other. So in this video, I'm going to lay out 4 different elements that make the Showa era unique. From the general formula that these series follow, to how the writers are portrayed, how the evil organizations changed over time, and what the general themes of Kamen Rider are in the Showa era. But before we get to that, let's talk about why I'm making this video in the first place. The actual appeal of Kamen Rider. Well, to put it simply, Kamen Rider is just really fucking cool. Yeah, back in the day the series was made with cheap looking rubber suits and effects, but that's what gives this era of this series its charm. I love the fact that the majority of this series is just people in rubber suits beating the crap out of each other. That's a part of what makes it so fun to watch. It really makes me feel like a kid again as I get way more hyped than I should watching the Kamen Rider's Henshin every single time. Yeah, Kamen Rider may just be dumb fun, but it's dumb fun in the most unique way possible. Let's go over why that is by going over the formula of Showa era Kamen Rider. In 1971, with the first Kamen Rider, that series set the tone and set the example of what Kamen Rider was going to be like for the entirety of the Showa era. In this first series, our main character Takeshi Hongo is a motorcycle racer being trained by his mentor Tachibana Tobe. One day, Takeshi is abducted by an evil secret organization called Shocker, in order to be turned into a cyborg and lead them to world domination. But Takeshi escapes after being turned into a cyborg by Shocker, allowing him to transform into Kamen Rider, giving him superhuman abilities. Ever since then, Takeshi lives to fight against Shocker and thwart their evil plans of taking over the world. Every other Kamen Rider series follows this formula with various differences between them, but all in all still fall under the idea of a man who is turned into a cyborg, thus allowing him to turn into a Kamen Rider and fight against an evil organization and their various monsters that they will use to enact their evil plans. This formula and the many variations of it as the series goes on is what sets the Showa era apart from the later eras. It gives the different series of this era a unique identity and sets up the expectations that the viewer will have when watching the show. Now the Showa era has quite a few different series in it, and with these different series they use this formula in different ways depending on the tone that they're going for the show. This tone is usually set by the writer of that series and the evil organization that the writer fights against. Let's explore how the different writers and organizations breathe new life into the different series of the Showa era by using some series as examples. I'm not going to talk about all of the series because we'd be here all damn day. we have to talk about the first Kamen Rider, Takeshi Hongo. Takeshi set the standard of how a Kamen Rider is portrayed in every Kamen Rider series after him, even past the Showa era. The series really wouldn't be the same without him. A hero of justice who always fights to protect the weak, usually meaning children. Takeshi is a lone warrior fighting against the organization Shocker to stop them from taking over the world. Well, he was alone until the second Kamen Rider shows up, but more on him a bit later. I'm also a big fan of the suit. It's the original, so you gotta give it some respect, but I think the original Kamen Rider suit looks awesome and definitely sets the standard for rider suits to come. In the show, Takeshi is portrayed as a stoic yet kind-hearted man who loves to ride his motorcycle and compete in races, under the guide of his racing mentor, Tachibana Tobe, who is also an important figure in Kamen Rider lore, who we'll be talking about later as well. At the beginning of the series, Takeshi is an outgoing and cheerful person, focusing on his love of racing. But after he is captured and turned into a cyborg by Shocker, he became more standoffish and emotionally distant. This came from the fear of his new cyborg body and the fact that he is no longer human. We see him struggling with this fact in an early episode where he goes to hold a child and he hurts them on accident with his superhuman strength. Shocked at this happening, Takeshi laments about his loss of humanity. This adds a tragic hero element to Takeshi, with him alone having to deal with him being a cyborg alongside fighting against Shocker. This is a theme that will come into play for later writers as well. This is not a theme that comes up often in the original Kamen Rider, but it certainly had an impact on Takeshi's character going forward. From this point on, we see Takeshi come into his own as the lone Kamen Rider. But this wouldn't stay that way for long. After the 13th episode, the actor for Takeshi Hongo, Hiroshi Fujioka, got into a motorcycle accident and couldn't perform as Kamen Rider until he recovered. So instead of stopping or even canceling the showrunners decided to get another actor to play Kamen Rider, but not to replace Fujioka, but to create a new character and a second Kamen Rider. Next up, let's talk about Hayato Ichimonji. Hayato is another person who was turned into a cyborg by Shocker. He escaped with the aid of Takeshi, and in Takeshi's stead, as Takeshi went overseas to fight against Shocker around the world, Hayato protects the innocence of Japan from Shocker. As a person, Hayato is pretty different from Takeshi. When we first meet him, he's a freelance photographer who seems to be following around Tachibana and the rest of the Kamen Rider gang who help Takeshi. But when the group is attacked by Shocker mutants, Hayato reveals himself as the new Kamen Rider. Hayato is a lot more energetic and playful than Takeshi. While Takeshi is stoic and dark, Hayato is light and fun. Even though Hayato may have a more playful personality, he is still a hero who will fight for justice just in his own way. I think Hayato is a breath of fresh air for the original Kamen Rider, breathing new life into the masked hero. His addition to this series also sets the precedent of having multiple writers in one series, which is something that will be explored fully in the Heisei and Reiwa eras. Moving on to the following series, next up we have to talk about Kamen Rider V3. Shiro Kazami, after being fatally wounded by Destron, the new evil organization after Shocker was defeated by the first two Kamen Riders, Kamen Rider Ichigo Takeshi Hongo and Kamen Rider Nigo Hayato Ichimonji, decides to save Shiro's life by turning him into a cyborg. Thus, Shiro Kazami is turned into Kamen Rider V3. He lives to get revenge on Destron for killing his family, and will fight their monsters at every turn to get justice. While Shiro's personality is pretty similar to Takeshi's, at least at the beginning, he is stoic and emotionally distant as well, and doesn't want anybody to get close to him so that no one else will get hurt, just like his family. What makes Shiro stand out as a Kamen Rider is just how he is the first Kamen Rider to have to fully learn his powers on his own. In the second episode, Kamen Rider Ichigo and Nigo sacrificed themselves to stop a nuclear bomb from going off in Japan. It was going to take them some time to come back, so in their stead, Shiro must learn to be a Kamen Rider and learn what all of his powers are to fight against Destron. In the series, it says that V3 has 26 different secret abilities. Throughout the series, we learn what each one of them are, from having different kinds of rider kicks, including a double kick and a drill kick, having superhuman strength and resistance, having a surveillance drone that is able to see the surrounding area and fleeing enemies, creating a barrier to deflect enemy attacks, etc. Shiro learns all of these secrets in battle with Destron, but also while he is training with Tachibana Tobe. Like I said before, Tachibana is an important staple to the Showa era of Kamen Rider. Tachibana was the original Kamen Rider's motorcycle mentor, but after Takeshi turns into a Kamen Rider, he helps fight against Shocker. Tachibana is actually in almost all of the Showa era series, from the original Kamen Rider all the way up to Kamen Rider Stronger. In each series, he is an ally to the Kamen Rider and will help them in various different ways, either through training them or helping the Kamen Rider thwart the plans of the evil organizations. In V3, Tachibana helps Shiro by using the Rider Scouts, a group of children who help the Kamen Riders get information or tell them the information of where the evil organizations are conducting their plans. Tachibana and the Rider Scouts are a staple in the Showa era, so they both definitely had to be mentioned. Later on in the series, Kamen Rider Ichigo and Nigo make their return, but also a new rider joins their ranks, and that rider is Rider Man. Joji Yuki, aka Rider Man, is a pretty interesting addition, especially since he used to work for Deathstrong, but after seeing what their leader was really like, decides to fight against them as Rider Man. While not my favorite rider, he certainly adds a new dynamic to the Kamen Rider formula that wasn't there before, and set a precedent for later series to come. Alright, moving on to the next notable example of how the writers changed the formula. The next really big change came with Kamen Rider Amazon. Amazon is a completely different kind of rider to the previous ones. He is not the typical rider hero that we've gotten used to in the past couple of series, because Amazon's main character is Daisuke Yamamoto, who as a baby survived the plane crash that landed into the Amazon rainforest. He is essentially a Tarzan-like character, because he doesn't really speak and he is scared of modern technology. When his entire tribe is killed by Geddon, in search for the GG armlet, the last elder of the tribe gives the armlet to Amazon and changes its body to be able to transform the Kamen Rider Amazon. He is sent on a boat to Japan to find a professor, and in doing so befriends the nephew of that professor, showing him how to live in the modern day. Amazon is a weird series for a few reasons. One of the main ones being that the writer Amazon is a wild man who barely speaks throughout the entire show. He still keeps the tradition of protecting children, especially since he befriends Masahiko, the professor's nephew. But other than that, he doesn't really resemble the other writers much at all. He doesn't even ride a motorcycle, at least not at the beginning of the series, because he's afraid of them. What sets Amazon apart is that he's experiencing for the first time what it's like to live in a modern city, and seeing him slowly get used to and embracing certain things, like seeing a car for the first time and riding a motorcycle. These things and the much darker tone that Amazon goes for really makes the series stand out. Another thing that makes this series stand out is the insane amount of violence in the show. Kamen Rider is no stranger to blood, but Kamen Rider Amazon takes it to the extreme. Instead of the Kamen Rider using their special kick to defeat their enemies as they fall on the floor and explode like usual, Amazon just rips the monsters apart. I think this is supposed to showcase his savage upbringing in nature, but yeah, they really go over the top with the violence in this show. The intense violence is one of the main reasons why the show ended up getting cancelled. Kamen Rider Amazon is the shortest Kamen Rider series, with it being only 24 episodes, and that short run definitely had to do with the amount of violence that the show went for. While it may not have worked out completely, I would still say that Kamen Rider Amazon was a worthwhile experiment in trying to shake up the Kamen Rider formula, and I was always look upon it fondly for that. Let's keep going with a few more examples, with two of my personal favorite series in the Showa era, those being Kamen Rider X and Kamen Rider Stronger. Starting with Kamen Rider X, this series and its writer was a pretty interesting change of pace after Kamen Rider V3. In this series, our main character Jin Keisuke is the son of a professor and scientist who studies human cybernetics. Professor Keitaro is approached by the world-dominating organization GOD, or GOD, in order to make cyborgs for them. The professor refuses, and him and his son Keisuke are attacked. But before he dies, Professor Keitaro turns his son Keisuke into a cyborg to save his life, thus giving birth to the legendary writer Kamen Rider X. This series did a lot of new interesting things that haven't been done in Kamen Rider before. The first being adding a family dynamic to the writer's life. In previous shows, the writer's family is either not mentioned or dead. So seeing Keisuke's father and the rocky relationship that they had added a new dynamic to this series and its writer. This series also had a semi-ongoing plot with Keisuke's girlfriend Ryoko. At the beginning of the series, it seems like she turned against Keisuke and joined God, but it turns out she was an Interpol agent working on the inside to stop God. All of these things are compiled on top of each other when we get to know our main character Jin Keisuke. Keisuke is a very different protagonist as compared to Takeshi Hongo or Shiro Kazumi. Keisuke is much more emotionally open than those two writers. Keisuke really wears his heart on his sleeve, and he's not perfect, but it's his imperfections that make him unique and relatable. Like Kamen Rider V3, Keisuke has to train in order to fully learn his abilities. He does this training with Tachibana, of course, but one thing that I really like about Keisuke is that he fails sometimes. There's an episode where Keisuke fails to defeat a monster called Mach Achilles, and we actually get to see him at his lowest point, which we usually never see with writers. After training with Tachibana, he learns a new move and defeats Mach Achilles, learning from his mistakes and becoming better for it. He is also the first writer to have a signature weapon, with his Raido stick and Raido whip, taking out agents and monsters of God. If I had to compare him to another character, Kisuke definitely reminds me of Nero from the Devil May Cry series, especially when it comes to both of those characters being vulnerable with their emotions and failures, and also with both of them having love interest. Alright, on to one of my favorite series in Kamen Rider, Kamen Rider Stronger. In this show, our main rider is Joe Shigeru. Shigeru actually tricked the evil organization of this series, Black Satan, into turning him into a cyborg. Because Black Satan killed his best friend, he used their powers against them and fights them at every turn as Kamen Rider Stronger. Stronger is definitely one of the most unique and downright one of the coolest Kamen Riders ever. Starting with our protagonist Joe Shigeru, he's definitely a bit different from your usual Kamen Rider protagonist. Joe Shigeru has much more of a punk-like, delinquent attitude than some of the other riders. If Jin Kisuke from Kamen Rider X is like Nero, then Joe Shigeru is definitely like Dante, all the way down to taunting his opponents in battle in his cocky attitude. But even though Joe Shigeru is a bit more abrasive than some of the other riders, that doesn't stop him from being a warrior of justice. He even says so himself in one of the coolest gimmicks in Kamen Rider, where every time Shigeru henshins, the enemies hear a whistling sound, and Shigeru gives this epic speech that you just gotta see for yourself. Isn't that awesome? Kamen Rider Stronger is also the first rider to have specific powers. Most other Kamen Riders have general superpowers like super strength, super hearing, jumping really high, things like that. But Stronger has all of those powers, but it also specifically has electricity based powers. He has tons of them. Quite frankly, the show gave him too many. Like attacking with electric shocks, sending electricity through the ground to shock multiple enemies. It's able to lift and move around metal objects with electromagnets. It's able to create an electricity barrier, and many, many more. Not even including his Stronger electro kick that he usually uses to finish off enemies. It leads to Stronger not really getting beat up as much as some of the other riders. In the original Kamen Rider, V3 and X, and pretty much all of the other ones, the riders get beat up pretty bad sometimes. But not Stronger, he's way too cool for that. Joe Shigeru is definitely one of my favorite protagonists in the Showa era for his personality, the awesome suit, and just how hype everything he does is. Kamen Rider Stronger is definitely one to look out for. Alright, time to mention my favorite rider in the Showa era. Kamen Rider Stronger was close to being my favorite, but I don't think any of the other series stand up to Kamen Rider Black. Minami Kotaro and his twin brother Nobuhiko are captured after their 19th birthday by Golgom, an evil organization that wishes to use the boys to become the new leaders of Golgom, the Century Kings. Minami Kotaro manages to escape, but not before being turned into a cyborg by Golgom. After escaping, Kotaro fights back to stop Golgom's plans as Kamen Rider Black. First off, look at that damn suit! It is immaculate. This is easily my favorite Showa ever suit, hands down. Everything about it just looks so damn cool. Minami Kotaro is also a sort of a revamped version of earlier writers like Takeshi Hongo and Shiro Kazami. He certainly brings back that tragic hero archetype from those other writers. But I feel like it's offset by this sort of double life that Kotaro leads. When he is with his friends or showing children how to play a sport or whatever, he comes off as bright and cheery. But when he's on the hunt for Golgom, his darker, more brooding side comes out of him, and it's really interesting to watch him flip back and forth between these two modes. I feel like Kotaro is the endpoint of the Showa era writer. He is the culmination of every other writer prior to him, and I think that easily makes him the best one. He is a tragic hero like Takeshi Hongo. He fails yet gets back up every time like Jin Kisuke. He even has the edge to him like Joe Shigeru. It's like he is the writer that every other series wanted their writers to be like, and that really sets Kotaro apart from many of the other writers. With him riding his sentient motorcycle Battle Hopper. Yes, the motorcycle is alive and has one of the most emotional scenes in the show. Kamen Rider Black fights against Golgom to rid the world of their evil and to save his brother in the process. Minami Kotaro with sadness in his heart lives to fight for a better tomorrow. Okay, now I want to talk about a few of the evil organizations that Kamen Riders fight, and some of their enemies. The franchise manages to revamp the idea multiple times in different cool ways, and I want to go over some of those differences. But first, we gotta start with the original. We first must talk about Shocker. Shocker are just Nazis. Like, that's pretty much it. They are a secret organization of Nazis who use various mutant monsters to get the people of the world to submit to their will. They also start the trend of getting various scientists and specialists to work for them to create different kinds of monsters. The monsters in this series are based on various plants and animals, from spiders and bats to carnivorous plants. There are tons of examples of strange monsters under Shocker's control, who hatch various schemes in order to increase their influence. But Kamen Rider Ichigo and Nigo are always on the scene to stop them. Every other evil organization in the Showa era of Kamen Rider is pretty much just like Shocker, looking to take over the world. But some of the organizations do have some interesting differences that I do want to share. Like with Destron, the organization in V3. They use their mutants to usually brainwash people into joining their group. Like the TV Fly episode, where a giant fly whose eyes are TVs hypnotizes people at a hospital into joining Destron. Yet the gimmick with the monsters in V3 was pretty unique, where all of the monsters are animals mixed with household items or machinery. There was Scissor Jaguar, who was a humanoid jaguar with scissor hands. There was a turtle monster that had a bazooka on its back, who was able to turn into a bomb. There was a machine gun snake, and many others. I definitely think that V3 has some of the better monster designs in the Showa era. This trend of hypnotizing people and turning them against the Kamen Rider will continue into Kamen Rider X. In this series, the monsters can also disguise themselves as humans to infiltrate certain places or to blend into their surroundings. This is used to cause mass hysteria, disguising as someone that the citizens trust in order to continue their plan. The organization in X was called God, or God. And more than any other Kamen Rider organization, they seem the most like a secret organization. They even give their orders to their members through objects that give them messages and then explode. With the monsters being able to disguise themselves and these secret messages, it seems like they want to be one of the more secret groups in Kamen Rider. With the character of Apollo Geist, Kamen Rider X is the first series to have an ongoing rival for the writer. This is a trend that will continue into other Kamen Rider series, especially in the Heisei and Reiwa eras. Black Satan is another really interesting one, because not only are they pretty secretive, the monsters under their control can possess the bodies of other people. So instead of just disguising themselves, the monsters actually turn into spiders that crawl into people's ears. Yeah, I know, creepy, right? You know that somebody is possessed by them by having a black cross and a circle on their ear. This is definitely one of the most unique ways for the organizations to function than the other series. Golgum from Kamen Rider Black is definitely one of the best takes on the evil organization trope in Kamen Rider. One difference is that we see who the leaders are off rip, and it isn't shown to us later like in some grand reveal. The three leaders of Golgum we see in pretty much every episode. It's similar to Geddon in Kamen Rider Amazon, who is a demon with 10 faces, who we see in many of the episodes. Many of the mutants in Kamen Rider Black are used to spread Golgum's influence, from hypnotizing citizens to create or feed other mutants. The mutants are an integral part of Golgum's plans. Another interesting thing about Golgum is that the High Priests don't always agree on what to do, and sometimes bicker and argue amongst themselves. This adds a lot more characterization to our main villains than some of the other seasons. There are also two rival characters in the show, one being the ancient knight Berginia, who works outside of the influence of the High Priest, pretty much acting on his own and telling the priests how much they suck at fighting Kamen Rider. Later on in the series, we also have Shadow Moon, the brother of Kotaro, who also acts outside the influence of the High Priest. Man, those guys can't catch a break. The brotherly rival adds much more of an emotional connection to the battles that they have against each other, which is another first of Kamen Rider as well. Let's now talk about some of the themes that these series in the Showa era use. The main theme obviously being justice and the fight for it. Most superheroes, whether they are from the West or the East, fighting for justice is a common theme, but no series goes as hard about it as Kamen Rider. I love how much each rider is dedicated to protecting the weak and fighting for justice. Kamen Rider Ichigo and Nigo display this perfectly as they tirelessly fight against Shocker, even if they feel like things are hopeless. They will always fight for a better tomorrow. And I think that is definitely one of the main appeals of the Showa era of Kamen Rider, is that each rider is so dedicated to their cause and how that earnestness is played completely straight. In the world today, it is rare to find any piece of media, let alone superhero media, that plays with these basic themes of superheroes earnestly. There's also some kind of meta commentary or joke about superheroes or whatever nerdy thing that the show or movie is about. And while it can be done right, a lot of the times it feels like the creators are ashamed of their creations, so they have to make everything a joke in order to undercut that feeling. This never happens in Kamen Rider. When Kamen Rider Stronger says that he is a hero of justice, he really means it. When Kamen Rider X pulls out his Rido stick to kick some ass, there's no joke about how ridiculous it is that he gets a whole stab from the small compartment on his belt. He just does it and it's awesome. Sure, Kamen Rider in general, not just in the Showa era, is gimmicky, and a lot of stupid shit happens in these series. But they take the stupid shit and run with it, making it all the more entertaining. Yes, these karate bugmen are fighting for justice, and you just can't help but to get swept up in it. Another big theme in these series is community. How having good people around you can help you in many ways, whether that be your neighborhood, your family, your friends. Being in a community with others is an important staple in Kamen Rider. Many of the evil schemes that evil organizations have to do with breaking up communities and turning everyone against each other. Like in an episode of Kamen Rider X, where there was this village who had this outcast kid who played the flute. But God sent a disguised monster that plays the flute that causes people to go violent and aggressive. People started to blame the kid even though it wasn't his fault, sowing distrust in the town. They went so far as to almost kill this kid because of this. It wasn't until Rider X exposed the monster and defeated him where people realized what they did and apologized. Having a strong sense of community with people ready and willing to help you and have your back is a common occurrence in this series, especially in contrast to the writer of the show, who is usually fighting alone against evil forces. But even then, the Kamen Riders get support in different ways, from Tachibana mentoring many of the first writers in the series, to the friends that some of the writers have, like the Snack Amigo crew in the first Kamen Rider, or the family that took Kazuya in Super 1, or Nobuhiko's sister and his girlfriend to Kotaro in Kamen Rider Black. The Rider Scouts is also a big one, where Tachibana led a group of children to help Kamen Rider in the original series and in V3. All of these people give support to the writers of these series, so they don't have to fight evil alone. There's also people who fight alongside some of these writers, like Kiriko in Kamen Rider Stronger, who henshins into Electro Wave Human Tackle, and fights alongside Shigeru, taking down Black Satan. So even though it may seem that the writers are alone in their fight, there's always people around them that give these writers a helping hand. This sense of community doesn't only come from outside people, but from other writers as well. This theme of community amongst writers and the passing of the torch was a big part of most of the Showa era. Writers from past series will make appearances in later series, giving the writers themselves a sense of community amongst each other. V3 is the most obvious example of this, but that series is more of a literal passing of the torch, since Kamen Rider Ichigo and Nigo turned Shira into a Kamen Rider and left the series for a while. Kamen Rider X had Kamen Rider Nigo and V3 come back to help Rider X fight against God. But the biggest crossovers would be in Kamen Rider Stronger, in the Z-Cross movie. In Kamen Rider Stronger, every past writer makes an appearance, starting with V3, to X and Amazon, Rider Man, and of course Ichigo and Nigo. All 7 writers actually show up in the finale for Stronger, to help Shigeru destroy the Dozer army for good. This is easily one of the hypest episodes in the series, since every writer gets some screen time to do something cool, and if you're familiar with all of these writers like I am, you'll definitely have a blast watching it. After this episode, all of these writers became known as the Legendary 7, who all interacted with each other in these different series. The Z-Cross movie also had the Legendary 7, but also added Kamen Rider Skyrider and Kamen Rider Super 1, alongside with the new 10th writer, Kamen Rider Z-Cross. It was really cool seeing all of these writers interact, and Z-Cross was a very cool addition to them. It's just a shame that the special never got turned into a full series. This theme of community amongst writers definitely makes Kamen Rider stand out, and it is incredibly rewarding to people who have seen all of these series. I love watching them all together doing what they do best, protecting the weak and fighting for justice. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. I really love Kamen Rider, and I hope I convey that to you all in the best way possible. Now, I talked about the appeal of Kamen Rider, but I never really talked about where to start, so here are some of my few quick recommendations. My personal favorites from the Showa era are Kamen Rider Black and Kamen Rider Stronger. I feel like the best series to start with is either Kamen Rider Black or Kamen Rider X, since they don't have that many ties to earlier series. So if you're feeling it, you can start with the original Kamen Rider. Yeah, it may be a bit dated with the visuals and effects, but it is still so much fun to watch. I really hope that I showed newcomers to this series the appeal of Kamen Rider and just how cool it can be. And I also really hope that I showed people who love the Heisei and Reiwa eras just what the fuss is all about with these older shows. Speaking of the Heisei and Reiwa eras, that's actually what the next video is going to be about. It's going to be a big video, I already know it. But I can't wait to work on it, and I can't wait for you guys to see it. So tune in next time for that. Alright then, peace.